Hi guys, welcome to my channel once again. This is Peter and you're watching Thailand Bound. Right, okay, by the time you guys watch this, it should be about 2 weeks until I'm in Thailand. I'm really looking forward to it. Going for a very long time this time, 2 to 3 months. Haven't made up my mind yet. But what I wanted to say to you guys is I am running very short of these stories now. What I've done, because I want the stories to continue when I'm in Bangkok, as I said before, I don't want to sit in a hotel room and waste a couple of days. You're just sitting in a room preparing stories. What I'd been doing was preparing them here, uploading them, so all I would have to do is basically release them when I'm in Bangkok. Now that's all great in theory, but the problem is I'm going through the stories like wildfire, and what's happened is I've got 3 weeks of upload. I wanted to get 8 weeks of upload, but I've got 3 weeks of upload ready to go for when I'm in Thailand, but I've really exhausted my supply of stories now. So I am getting them in 1 or 2 a week, but guys, again, if you're sitting on a story, please send it in, because unfortunately what will happen is I will run out when I'm in Thailand, and okay, I'm gonna be making videos while I'm in Thailand, which is great, but I know a lot of you guys do like the stories, but I can only read out what I'm sent in, and if I'm not sent any in, then unfortunately that'll be it for a while anyway. Okay, but back to today. I have 5 stories again for you today. These are pretty good stories as always, so I'll just get straight into these.
สวัสดีค่ะ
I stumbled across one of your videos the other day and I wanted to share an experience I had in Phuket 2 years ago. My parents live in Phuket, so I normally visit during the holidays. Every year I come back to train at a Thai gym where I meet many different people from around the world. I went to Kudo Beach to have dinner and have some drinks with friends that I had met in the gym before going to Bangla Road. After eating, we went to a bar to grab some more drinks. We were the only ones at the bar as it was early January and this was when COVID was getting bad, but bars and clubs were still open. The owner of the bar let us play our own music and we were singing the night away, having a great time. After an hour or two, we continued walking along Bangla Road and went bar hopping. As we made our way into one particular bar, I saw a girl who I thought was very attractive. As I walked past her to go to the bar, we made very long eye contact. The type of eye contact that suggested she wanted me to come to her and ask her to dance, but I continued to walk past her and rejoin my friends as I saw something that looked a bit suspicious. She was with a very skinny, pale Thai guy who was standing right beside her. They didn't look like they were in a relationship. She was far too pretty to be with him, but I was skeptical. I decided to go back to our table and continue drinking with my friends. As I walked back to our table, I made very long eye contact with her once again. I looked at her and shook my head at her, indicating to follow me. She came over to me, but not alone. The other guy came over, which I thought was really weird, but they both seemed very friendly. It was too loud to actually hear anything they were saying, and I was too drunk to take anything in anyway. After chatting to this girl for a while, I gently grabbed her hand and asked her if she wanted to dance. She nodded her head, indicating to the guy she was with. I realized at this point that they were probably a couple, and as much as I wanted to pull her aside and dance with her, I didn't want to make any trouble. I left them alone and went and found my friends who had a table at the front and were dancing with some girls they had met. I joined in the dancing with the girls, and a few minutes after, I instantly knew something was not quite right. So I turned to my friend and I told him, I think someone has spiked my drink. My head was spinning and I couldn't really walk. They took me to the toilet where I started throwing up. They called a cab for me and I remember trying to unlock my phone, but I wasn't able to enter my password as everything was too blurry. The taxi driver finally arrived at my home. The driver said something to me, and as I went to say drop me off here, I found it difficult to speak. I couldn't put a sentence together as I was slurring my words. The taxi driver got very frustrated, so he just told me to leave. I managed to make it back to the house safely and couldn't thank my friends enough for helping me back home. I had to stay at home for 5 days to completely recover. It was unlike anything I have ever experienced before, and the following week I went back to the gym with my friends. After training, we sat down and recorded everything that had happened that night. My friend who booked the taxi to get me home safely recalled that the Thai guy who was with the girl I was talking to at the back of the bar may have poured something into my drink. It was the same pale skinny guy I thought was suspicious. I remember having a bad gut feeling about him and should have followed my gut instincts. I was way too drunk to realise it at the time, but it all made sense and it validated what had happened. I asked him why he didn't tell me at the time. He thought that we had known each other. I completely understood, as I remember this pale Thai guy being very friendly. Till this day, I don't know what they spiked my drink with, and I don't know what their plans with, but probably to get me outside and to rob me. I wanted to share my story as I've grown up in Phuket, and these things happen all the time where pretty girls will bait you guys to spike your drink. I guess they intended to get me outside, as I've said, but I was lucky. Just be careful, guys, when you're on Bangla Road. Okay, so the first thing that hit me about that story, when I first read that out, when I was editing it, I thought, hang on a minute, your drink's been spiked, you were with some really good friends, but they called you a taxi and let you go home on your own. It's just unbelievable, really. I mean, I don't want to criticise his friends, but if one of my friends had his drink spiked and he was throwing up and he was slurring and he just wasn't with it, I would take him home, put him in his apartment, make sure he was safe, and if I hadn't finished my night, I'd go back out again. I wouldn't just call a taxi and stick the guy in there. I mean, the taxi driver could have been rogue, you never know, but that's just my own personal thoughts. This thing about drink spiking, you hear about it all over the world, and of course it happens in Thailand as well. Now, I've heard about it happening in Khao San Road. You get a lot of young people going there, and you get a lot of chancers, con men who are chancers, so they head down there. The young people being a little bit naive, without insulting them, you know, they can be easy targets, can't they? But around Nana, Sukhumvit, you know, Soy Cowboy, Nana Plaza, I've never really heard too much about anything. Well, I say too much, I haven't heard anything about any spiking in Soy Cowboy or Nana Plaza. There was a spate of things going on in Pattaya years and years ago. I'm going back to the early, late 90s, middle of the 90s, let's say about 95, 96, where girls were putting a liquid on their breasts and encouraging the guy to, I don't need to say anymore, do I? But they would pass out and they would wake up and everything was gone, watch, passport, money, the whole lot. The police jumped on that quite quickly. They were very good, actually. And I think there were only about 3 cases at the time. All right. So without being paranoid, just, you know, don't leave your drink unattended. That's the only advice I could give you on that one. Let's go straight into story number 2 here. I just listened to the 6 recent stories you read out yesterday and remembered an incident I had in Thailand. I was preparing to leave Thailand to return to the States for medical appointments. I had some errands to run, so left in my truck by myself. I was driving on a highway and traffic was not very busy, but I still tried to be observant while driving. I needed to move over to the left lane to go under a bridge and make a U-turn. My wife had stayed at home, so I was driving alone. I looked at my side mirror and I saw no traffic. Put on my turn signal, and as I moved over, I heard a noise. A motorcycle had come up in the lane very quickly and had impacted my left front tyre. It didn't do any damage to my truck, but his motorcycle had crashed. I could have driven on and probably not have ever been found out, but I stopped and went back to check on the guy on the motorcycle. Luckily, he wasn't badly injured, but his helmet had been cracked in 2 and came off his head, but it had saved his life. The police and ambulance showed up and the medics treated him at the scene and left. The police told us to meet them at the police station. I called my wife and told her what had happened and had her call the insurance company. The insurance agent showed up at the police station about the same time as my wife arrived. He talked to the guy on the motorcycle, then he came over and talked to me. I told him what had happened. He said he believed me as my story seemed more realistic than what the motorcycle driver had told him. He then talked to the police and came back to me. He explained the insurance would pay for the damage to the motorcycle, the hospital bill for the motorcycle driver, and the driver's salary for his time off work to recover and get his motorcycle repaired. But the police wanted to state that I was responsible for the accident, as they charged 500 baht for a police report and didn't feel the Thai guy would have 500 baht and that I would. He then asked if I was willing to pay the 500 baht for the police report. Also, during this time, the police had never asked for my passport and had trusted me to go to the police station on my own. I had only 4 hours before my flight, so told him I would gladly pay the 500 baht. I'm writing this story in defence of the police as I feel they do an excellent job in Thailand and want to commend them for the jobs they do. I have been stopped in Bangkok a few times for traffic infractions. I will talk with the officer and then give him 200 baht. I do not feel I was scammed, as I'm sure going to court would cost me more than 200 baht. And I like to feel I'm just buying lunch for the officer that day, as I believe, like most police officers, they are generally underpaid for doing a thankless but necessary job. So there you go. Yeah, I just happen to have bought a lot of policemen lunch in my time, I can tell you, when it is very, very normal. And like the guy says, you know, it's cheaper than going to court. It instantly goes away, doesn't it? If you could do it here, it'd be great. You know the system here, you get a ticket, you get it all through the post. Sometimes you have to go to court. You know, if you could just pay it on the spot and forget about it, it'd be so good, wouldn't it? But it's happened to me. I'll give you an example. I was coming out of Soi 4 on a motorcycle years ago, and you couldn't turn right where the police box is. You get to Sukhumvit Road, you can't turn right, you have to turn left. And I was daydreaming. I didn't turn right, but I put my indicator on to turn right. The police box is there, come running out. I didn't speak any Thai at the time, just a few words, and I knew what was going on. I thought, you know what, the easiest option is just to give the guy a couple of 100 baht, which I did, and he went into the box with a smile, and that was the end of it. Okay. Another incident that happened is, I remember years ago I was driving a car and it was on Soi 23 coming towards Sukhumvit again. I'd been to Pattaya with a friend and I was dropping him off at his apartment right at the end of Soi Cowboy, and we pulled over. And he opened the door, which you should always look for motorcycles, you know, because they're everywhere. And if you're going to open a car door, the first thing you do is check the mirror, you know, look, because there will be a motorbike there. He didn't. He opened the door and a motorcycle went into the passenger door. And at the time, there was a construction site right next door to his apartment. And of course, a crowd gathered, and it was all guys with yellow hats on, and more came around. I was thinking this could get very ugly. And my friend, he hadn't been in Thailand long, he stuck his head in the car and he said, the guy wants 3,000 baht to repair his motorcycle. Of course, we know it didn't cost that much. He said, what do you think I should do? And I said, pay him and get into your apartment. And luckily he took my advice, he paid the money, and the crowd dispersed. But you know, it can turn ugly very, very quickly. So, you know, you have to be careful of these things. Right, let's jump straight into story number 3. My story will start off in 2021 after a breakup, like all your best stories. I was 35 at the time. I don't consider myself ugly, and when I lived in Los Angeles, I never had a tough time getting women. Then I moved to a smaller city recently for work, and the dating pool became single mothers who were always extremely bitter. So I downloaded Tinder. I happened to be scrolling on Tinder, and a random Thai girl was using the Explorer option. In brackets, the Explorer option lets you change your location so you can look for someone in a different area. I did not know this at the time, and we matched. I am familiar with dating Thais. I lived by Thai Town in Los Angeles, and my ex was born in America. But her parents were from Isan. That's a long way to say I matched with that woman and decided that I was going to Thailand, and hopefully I would find myself a nice wife. I ended up going and buying the Tinder Gold and talking to a few girls. It took about 2 months and I found the girl of my dreams. She was born in central Thailand. We spoke 2 or 3 times a day doing video calls. My original plan was to buy a plane ticket 8 months later when tickets were cheap. Instead, Yai, the girl, asked me to hurry up and buy my ticket so I could speed up the process, and bought a ticket 3 months out, and I felt that this was a good compromise. She agreed. After talking on the phone for about 9 weeks, multiple times a day, she suddenly stopped texting me and didn't answer my calls. I knew something horrible had to have happened because there was no good reason for her not to respond. A few more weeks ticked by, and finally I saw that she had posted a picture on her Instagram page of her and an older foreign guy with hearts all over it. I couldn't believe it. I had been tricked. Fast forward to February 2022. I'm getting on the aircraft for Thailand, not knowing what I'll be doing and with who. After not sleeping on the aircraft because I gave up my window seat for an aisle seat, big mistake because everybody bumps into you constantly. I get to Bangkok airport and being completely out of it, I tried to figure out how to get my pre-booked taxi to my day 1 quarantine hotel. It wasn't easy. When I finally found my driver and got to the hotel, took my test, and I just crashed out as I was now exhausted. Sometime the next day after sleeping, I messaged a girl named O, who I had chatted with on and off, but only as friends, but I knew she really liked me. So I messaged her while waiting for my results for my test. The whole testing thing was a nightmare. I originally bought tickets when it was testing go in January. O almost instantly messaged me back and was excited to hear from me, but she didn't believe I was in Bangkok. O is from Isan, dark-skinned, kind of short, and had long jet black hair. Those are all the things I find pretty attractive. Well, after all the backstory and build-up, while talking to O, she said we should get something to eat. And I'm someone who always has room for a little more good food. She said she was working until 10:30 p.m, but she could meet me after she finished work in Bangna. We arranged to meet at a street market in Nana Plaza. The BTS train from Bangna would take her about 20 minutes to get to Nana. Since I figured O would not get there until about 10:25 or 10:40, I would just get there at 10 past 10 to check out the area and see what's going on. I was still pretty unclear what a night market was like and was excited to see one. In America, they're typically called swap meets, and it's usually held during the day. The taxi driver looks at me and asks if I really wanted to get out of the taxi at Nana, and I said, yes, of course I do. I didn't want to be judgmental, but it seemed very similar to like when I lived in Hollywood. Kind of dirty and a lot of scantily clad ladies, and surprisingly, tons of guys in all the bars. So I went into a 7-Eleven, grabbed a drink and walked along the same direction as the train goes. I have no idea why, but I had brought my backpack with me when I went to Nana. Not a smart idea. As I walk along, I noticed the area is getting what I would call seedier. A Thai man, clearly on drugs, who was very dirty, was the first thing I saw when I left the 7-Eleven. I figured that it would be best that I kept moving, as it wasn't the place to hang around to wait for O. I continued to walk down the street, and my first thought was there must be a club around here because there was a couple of pretty girls standing outside. The further I walk down the street, the more freelancers I see standing around. I continued down the street and I noticed that the ladies suddenly are becoming taller in height. Again, I think that something is not right here. I then realise I'm in the ladyboy part of the street. Normally, I wouldn't flinch, but the ladyboys went from looking like very attractive women to very scary. One of them was sitting on something like an electrical box and looked exactly like Shrek from the cartoon. I ended up making my way down to Tom's Coffee Shop, which is an American chain cafe. I was surprised to see it since I recognised the coffee shop from when I lived in Los Angeles. So I popped in to grab a coffee. I get a text from O telling me that she will be arriving 15 to 20 minutes later than when she originally was supposed to meet me. No problem for me. I decide to leave the coffee shop because there was a few strange people starting to gather. So I grabbed my coffee and I went outside. I'm outside for just a few minutes when a girl comes up to me and asks me what I'm looking for. I tell her nothing and she walks off. A few minutes later, she comes up to me again and tells me she would like to make friends with me. I laugh and say no thank you. The cycle repeats itself for about 10 minutes and she gets closer and closer and then starts rubbing on my backpack. At that point, all I could think of was that she was going to start stealing from me. So I swatted her hand off my backpack and decided to walk back into the coffee shop and grab a soda. After about 5 minutes, I once again left the cafe. The girl who had been trying to touch my backpack stood in front of the door and made a grab for my backpack again. I lost my temper and shouted at her, "Get the F away from me." This kind of shocked her and her eyes grew enormous as she stared at me. Everyone around us stopped and stared, and I know it wasn't a nice thing to do, but I told her I wasn't interested so many times and she definitely was trying to steal something from my backpack. I eventually did meet O. We had a wonderful time together and I finally found out what a Thai night market is all about. After I left Thailand, we stayed in touch for several months, but like most long distance relationships, after some time, it faded away to nothing. I've been back to Thailand several times. I've done some successful dating. My top tip to anyone looking for female company is to try and learn a little bit of Thai. I did, and it really helps with the dating scene. I probably came across as a little bit simple during this story because who takes a backpack on a date? But like all these things, you learn with experience. I'm 36, which is young for your channel, but I still enjoy your Saturday morning stories. My best experience in Thailand was aerobics with identical twins. Only in Thailand, as they say. There you go. Okay, so one point to make here, guys. You do have to be very, very careful when you're out and about with bags. I'll give you another little example here, as I like to do. A friend of mine went to Mabu Kong, the MBK Centre, and he had a rucksack, a day rucksack. He used to put a bottle of water, maybe some snacks. But he, for some reason, this is when internet cafes were very big. It was before the days where everybody had a lot of data on their phones. In those days, a phone was to text and to make a phone call. That was basically it. But the internet cafes were starting to spring up, and there was one in the MBK Centre, and my friend wanted to, he was looking for things in the MBK Centre that he could take back to the UK and sell, and he found some bits and pieces, and he wanted to get prices on what they cost in the UK. Obviously, if they're cheaper in Thailand, he could take a few back and sell them on eBay or something like that. So he sat on this PC and he put his rucksack between his legs. Didn't wrap the strap around his leg or anything like that. He just put it between his legs and put his feet on each side of the rucksack, but obviously they weren't quite touching. When found out the information he needed to on the PC in front of him, finished, got up to pay, looked down, and his rucksack had gone. You might call it something else in your country, knapsack or something, but it had gone. And luckily his passport wasn't in there, but he lost quite a lot of cash. So guys, when you're out and about, just take care. What some people do, it looks a bit strange, but when you've got a backpack, some people wear it the other way around, and you'll see a lot of women do this, especially Japanese and Koreans. They'll put the backpack on the front of them. That way it's a lot harder for somebody to access it. And although it looks strange and you don't want to look out of place, sometimes it might not be a bad idea, especially in a busy market like Jakajak, something like that. Okay, right. Again, not being paranoid, you just got to take care of your personal belongings. Let's jump into story number 4. I first heard about Thai women in the mid-80s when a friend described his annual trips there. He would hire a holiday girlfriend for his entire stay, preferring that over the chore of finding a companion every night in the bars or on the street. I was quite intrigued by his trips, but I was married at the time and a long time thereafter, so never really had the opportunity to sample beautiful Thai women. Fast forward 40 years and I find myself in Bangkok. I'm 63 years old now, but still fit as a fiddle. I'm an avid runner, lean as I can be, and still have a good set of hair on me. I have a bounce in my step. I'd say I'm decent looking for my age, but at the end of the day, I'm still an old man now. I'm divorced and single, no girlfriend. I've spent a good deal of time listening to your stories on Thailandbound, as well as doing a mind-boggling amount of research and self-education elsewhere. I am shocked at some of the train wreck stories, especially the lose it all accounts, and I wasn't going to let that happen to me. And it hasn't, yet. I want to share a story of an encounter with a Thai girl I met on my second night in Thailand. On my first night, I head out from my hotel to walk Sukhumvit, which, as your viewers know, is one of the busy districts in Bangkok. Taking in the sights and sounds of the streets of Bangkok is an incredible experience, to say the least. It's bustling with street vendors, ladies and ladyboys selling their wares. It's safe to say that Thailand has beautiful women, and some of the most beautiful women are not women at all. I avoid the beer bars and go-go bars. On my first night, I head to a well-known freelancer bar where girls work on their own and there are no bar fines. It's already late as I haven't arrived at my hotel from the airport until after 11 p.m. and it's now midnight, so it's time to get to work and I want to find a nice girl to spend some quality time with. I pick a beautiful and petite girl at the freelancer bar, chat her up, and we arrange to take a taxi to my hotel. It's an average experience, not great, but still enjoyable. After our session, she said thank you to me, walking her from the room downstairs to the street to catch a taxi, and she leaves alone, and that's the end of that. The next night, I return to the same bar to have another go. There I strike up a conversation with Martin, a guy who grew up in South America, but is now working in the US, and is currently on holiday in Thailand. He had been in Thailand for about 4 days and had already sampled 6 girls, mostly from the go-go bars. He said all but one of his experiences was amazing, but rather expensive when you factor in the ladies' drinks, bar fines, and the agreed upon for services. After my chat with Martin, I walk around the bar and notice a somewhat average looking petite who seems bubbly, making eye contact with me and smiling. Keeping in mind an average girl in Thailand is probably an 8 or a 9 everywhere else. I go over and chat with her. Her English is not great, but we are able to communicate the basics. Her name is Pom and she is 27 years old. I do the negotiation and within a couple of minutes we are walking out of the bar together. I quickly realise I still have a full beer left and I stop and ask Pom if she minds if we chill out for a bit while I finish my beer and that I will share it with her. She suggests I buy her a beer and we can sit for a bit longer. I do that and we enjoy our beers and a few laughs together. I quite like Pom's company thus far. It's a 25-minute walk to my hotel and I asked Pom if she would like to take a taxi, a walk. She says, up to you. And I tell her I enjoy walking and she said okay. She is wearing flat shoes, not heels, so she has no problem walking. On the way we are chatting a lot, holding hands, and she seems genuinely affectionate towards me. As we walk holding hands, she quite often grasps my upper arm with her free hand and rests her head on my shoulder. We arrive at the hotel a bit hot and sweaty and I suggest we shower. Pom agrees and we have a lot of fun in the shower, taking turns washing one another. After that, it's off for some aerobics. Pom never rushes anything, so our time is quite enjoyable. After the aerobics, we lay together on the bed, my arm around her and her head resting on my chest between my shoulder and neck. I'm so blissfully comfortable that I doze off for a bit. After a while, Pom suggests another shower to wrap up our session. I could easily have fallen asleep with her for the rest of the night. We shower, get dressed, and the night is still young, around 11 p.m. I asked Pom if she'd like a taxi back to the bar. Alternatively, if she would like to walk, I would accompany her. She agrees to walk, so we head out onto the streets again, back to the bar. The action on Sukhumvit Road is mind-boggling. I suggest we stop somewhere for a drink, pointing out a few bars on the way. Pom says she knows a bar where we should stop and I say okay. Turns out the bar Pom suggests is on the street right next to the freelancer bar where I met Pom and she knows the owner. The bar is a pop-up bar with a daughter who is good friends with Pom. In Bangkok, at night when the shops are closed, street bars are set up on the sidewalk. I figure I'll have a beer with Pom, then she'll head back to work in the adjacent freelancer bar. We enjoy great conversation, lots of laughs and jokes. I find I am becoming quite fond of Pom. We finish our beers and I ask Pom if she wants to head back into the bar and get back to work. She says she doesn't want to leave me alone. I insist that I am fine and I don't want to interfere with her work. The discussion is a stalemate and the only solution is to order more drinks and carry on. As we are drinking our beer at the sidewalk bar, Pom notices a guy she met before at this very street bar. He's sitting in a row of chairs against the building while we are at a table at the curb next to the street. People are walking the sidewalk between us. So many freelancers selling their wares on the street and also going in and out of the freelancer bar solo and leaving with new friends. The people watching is amazing. Pom invites the guy over to our table and he politely declines. I continue my enjoyable time with Pom and when we are offered a better table by Pom's friend, the daughter of the proprietor, we switch tables and while it is a better spot, my view of the sidewalk is compromised as I am facing a different direction. I'm figuring out that Pom is very perceptive, not clairvoyant by any means, but she just pays attention to voice tone, gestures, etc. and seems to know what I am feeling. She somehow knows I am dissatisfied with my new seating position and offers to switch places with me. I graciously accept and apologise for the fact that my eyes are constantly wandering, looking at all the beautiful women passing by. Unlike what I have heard about Thai women, Pom doesn't appear to have a jealous bone in her body and wants me to have a great time. She encourages me to look at the other girls while still giving her affection to me. Best of both worlds. I am less perceptive than Pom, but as we are sitting, I realise that her friend, the guy sitting alone, probably declined her offer to sit with us because he didn't want to intrude on my space. When I realise this, I turn around and gesture him to come to our table, and he does. Frank is a bear of a man, probably 125 kilos, double my weight, originally from Ukraine, now working for a company in Germany and living in Bangkok, working remotely. Frank has had an adventurous life and begins storytelling. His English is quite good and he has spent much time at sea in Southeast Asia, so has many tales to tell. I'll guess Frank is in his mid-50s. We finish our beer and I buy another round for the three of us. We're sitting drinking and I start to notice that Frank is looking at me the whole time, telling his stories, and Pom is left out of the conversation. I am uncomfortable with this and Pom is completely aware of my discomfort. Frank gets up to head to the toilet and I take the opportunity to switch my seat. Pom is sitting across from me at the table and Frank is to my right. I take Frank's seat so I can be next to Pom. I apologise to her that Frank is dominating the conversation and she is being left out. Again, Pom is aware of this and not particularly worried. I also tell Pom again that she should head back to the bar if she wants to find more clients, but she seems content to stay with me. It's getting late and I figure it's time to head back to my hotel. I ask Pom if she wants to join me. I don't expect to tip her and I don't expect any more services. I just want her company for a blissful night of sleep. I like her a lot and the thought of cuddling for the night and going to breakfast together in the morning is very appealing to me. She seems a bit angered by my suggestion and asks me why I didn't pay for long time in the first place. The answer is obvious. How could I possibly know from the beginning that I would like her so much? I don't say that, but rather shrug my shoulders and let it go. Frank returns to the table and I make a point of directing my conversation so Pom is not left out. I'm about to leave, then Frank insists on buying another round since I bought the last one. By this time, I am modestly tipsy, as are my table friends, but I decide it would be rude to turn down Frank's offer and Pom is ready for another drink anyway. We drink our beers as the street action continues, as does the conversation. I'm surprised that Pom does not want to head back into the bar, but at this point I realise it's time to head back to my hotel. I know Pom isn't going with me and I have had plenty of beer for the night. I get up somewhat abruptly, shake Frank's hand and enjoy a nice hug with Pom. I set off walking down the street and after a couple of blocks I realised that I did not get Pom's contact info. What a horrible blunder. She is such a nice girl and I really like her. I would like to see her again, but I don't turn around and I keep walking. We had a special connection, but I have to take the advice that one should never fall for a Thai bar girl or a freelancer. The next night I'm back in the freelance bar again, so many beautiful girls to meet up with. I keep looking for Pom, but alas, she is not to be found on this night. I choose another girl, take her to my hotel and quickly realise that while the experience is nice, it is nothing like what I had with Pom. I never see Pom again and maybe that is for the better, but I will always remember her as my first love in the land of smiles. That's quite a common thing I hear. You know, guys who go out to Thailand for fun, that's all they want. They just want fun, nothing more than that. They're not looking for girlfriends. But what happens is they meet a girl like Pom, and as far as they're concerned, they're just going to have dinner, a few drinks, that sort of thing. And they come across, these girls, they're very good at entertaining. You know, it comes across as natural. And a lot of these guys, I guess that's why the car crash stories are so, there's so many of them, because they get enticed thinking, you know, what a beautiful girl, I love her company, and it goes further. They don't stop. And, you know, the rest is history, as they say. Right, into our story number 5. This is our final story today. My first real bar girl experience was in Hua Hin several years ago. After another just an okay performance on the golf course at Palm Hills, I asked the driver to drop me off near the Hilton. He could then take my golf clubs back to my hotel. Normally, I would go back to my hotel, sit on the balcony and sulk over another depressing scorecard, but not on this day. I'm going for a few singers and anything else that takes my fancy. The first bar I go into, I'm playing pool with a Thai lady. It's early and nobody's about. Then a group of 6 English guys come in and we play killer pool for money. We have a few games. They're all decent guys and decent players. I won about 1,200 baht and decided to move on. Playing pool for money can turn ugly if you're not careful. I turn the corner past the Panama bar. A group of ladies are giving it, "Where you go, handsome man?" Well, I wasn't going anywhere as I was literally frog marched into a bar by a lady I'll refer to as B. Queen B. B was from Khon Kaen. I say bar girl, she was actually 38 years old. Beautiful long hair, full figure, possibly taller than the average Thai lady. Definitely the centre of attention in this bar, a fine sight around the pool table. The younger ladies seemed to look up to her. At that time, a bar fine was about 300 baht and I gave her 2,000 baht tip for her time. B told me she had 2 sons. One, she said, was no good and in prison, I think. The other was at school, and the reason she worked in the bar was to support him for his education. She was the life and soul of the party and drank whiskey and coke, and boy, could she knock them back. I remember being in the bar when a guy comes walking down the soy with a handcart selling ladies' clothes. All the girls rush out of the bar like excited children seeing Santa. They purchase yet another revealing skirt or top, the money given to them naturally from the phalang in the bar. One day, B told me the bar was closing for a day or two. The owner was having a housewarming party. I was invited if I wanted to go. On the evening of the party, I got into Hua Hin a little bit late. Everyone had already gone. B called me and she sent a tuk-tuk to pick me up. I was having a Bacardi Coke in the bar next door while a sinister looking gentleman was shining my shoes. When the driver arrived, it was a 20-minute ride away. Brand new property, no expense spared. Hua Hin's finest in attendance. It was really rocking with at least 150 people there, including go-go dancers, bar girls, phalang, gays and ladyboys. I got chatting with a big guy from London. He lived in Hua Hin. His Thai girlfriend was talking with B. She was an attractive young woman and was also singing on the purpose-built stage. She was wearing the shortest miniskirt I have ever seen. I then turned to the big guy and said, "I don't think she's wearing any underwear." He boomed with laughter. "This is Thailand, enjoy." He was drinking red wine like it was cola. B was drinking white wine. Around midnight the party was over and to my disbelief, the big guy gets on his motorbike and drives off into the night. He was quite drunk. Some people begged him not to, including his girlfriend. Me and B are in the tuk-tuk going back to Hua Hin. She is smashed. She can handle whiskey, but she can't handle white wine. I can't take her back to the hotel in that state. So we go back to where she is staying. I was in for a shock. The room was no more than 3 meters by 2 with a sliding patio door. All I remember was seeing clothes, shoes and a big water container. B asked if I wanted to see her the next day. I said no. I was meeting someone from Korat. A bit insensitive, I know. "I will kill you," she screamed. Queen bee, strong, sassy, confident, not now, vulnerable, lonely, almost distraught. We did meet up again a few days later. The following spring I was in Hua Hin. I called her. We were to meet in Murphy's bar at 10 p.m. She didn't turn up. Ties and timekeeping. Oh well, time to move on to another bar. I'll have a singer, please. So there you go, guys. That's the 5 stories for this week. I hope you enjoyed them. Before I go, I just want to mention something. From time to time, I'll get a message from people because these stories are listened to all over the world. But some guys will write to me and say, "Look, can you slow down as you're telling the story?" And the thing is, it's very difficult for me to purposely read slow. I do make the effort because I used to read very, very fast and I have slowed it down considerably. But if I slow it down anymore, it just won't sound natural. It'll just, like I say, it won't be natural. But what I would like to say to those guys who do struggle to hear what I'm saying from time to time, there is actually a text box. When you're watching the video, if you look at the bottom of you've got the screen, if you look at the bottom to the right there, there's a square box. And if you click that, a white line will come in and it generates text. And it's actually quite good. I was looking at it yesterday and comparing it to what I was actually saying, because a lot of text-to-speech gets it all wrong, doesn't it? Especially, when you're trying to speak a text on a mobile phone. But the one that YouTube uses is actually very, very good. So guys, if you're struggling, if you think I speak too fast, please turn on the text and you can read it as well as listen to it, and hopefully you won't miss too much, okay? Right guys, that's it. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you all next Saturday for some more stories. We've got enough for next Saturday, so that's good. And thanks for listening to me again, and I'll catch you all soon.